Good afternoon, everyone. I thank you for coming on this beautiful afternoon in Washington. Before I introduce today's speaker, I'd like to tell you about our last lecture in this series, which will happen next Saturday, the 30th of October, by Professor Ian Glover, and he'll speak on linking prehistoric and historic archaeology in early Vietnam, trading communities, and the emergence of Champa. Prior to next Saturday, Thursday and Friday, there will be a symposium here at the Freer on studies of ancient Asian metallurgy using scientific methods. And I want to point out particularly Thursday morning, the 28th, from 9 to 1, will be a session on Southeast Asian bronzes. All of this, of course, today's lecture and the symposium are related to the Gods of Angkor bronzes from the National Museum of Cambodia exhibition next door in the Sackler Gallery. Today we have as our speaker Dr. Olivier Cunin. Dr. Cunin has a degree in architecture, and since 1999 has been researching Bayonne-style monuments dating to the late 12th, early 13th century and other Khmer monuments by applying methods of building archaeology and various techniques of archaeometry. His first work in relation to the Bayonne Temple began in 1997 and entailed the virtual archaeological reconstruction of its northern library. In 2000, he initiated a research project he entitled From Top Prom to Bayonne, and this project was the basis for his doctorate degree, which he received in 2004. In 2008, Dr. Cunin was the consultant for a Swiss team working at the site of Banteay Chhmar, and since 2009, he's engaged in the virtual reconstruction of several Bayonne-style monuments. He's also the co-author of 2 books on the monuments in the Bayonne style, one on Banteay Chhmar, which was published in 2005, and one on the Bayonne Temple, which was published in 2007. So the title of today's talk is The Small Citadel, Reconstructing the Ruined Buddhist Complex of Banteay Chhmar. So, Dr. Cunin.
Thank you, Paul. So just for introduce this lecture is a result of the last 10 years of my studies on the Bayonne style monument, and especially on the Bayonne, Taprom, and Prakan. But today I will talking about one huge complex, Banteay Chhmar, quite far. So probably you are more familiar with the site in Angkor and Angkor himself. But today it will be quite different. So my presentation is divided in 4 parts. I will introduce where is Banteay Chhmar, when was Banteay Chhmar built, and after I propose to make a virtual visit of the site to understand how is the site currently, and finally I will talk about the problem of the restitution of this site. So where is Banteay Chhmar? So you can see here the map of the Indochina Peninsula, and Banteay Chhmar is located on the northwest of Cambodia in the province of Banteay Manche. So it's not so far from the border with Thailand, as you can see, and by car is from Siem Reap is something like 165 kilometers. So currently we spend from Siem Reap to Banteay Chhmar something like 2 hours and a half. So the interesting thing, if you compare the localization of this site with the Asian road, the Asian Angkorian road, you can see clearly you have no a direct connection on the main road during the Khmer Empire. So you have this Asian road from Angkor to Pimai, you have this one from Angkor to Stokoktom, and Banteay Chhmar is between. So of course you have some access. Some road was built for connect to the main road, but Banteay Chhmar is not located on one of these important access at this time. Here you have the map, the archaeological map elaborated by my colleague Damian Evans, and you can see a different archaeological sites. So the area where take place Banteay Chhmar is very rich concerning the archaeological point of view, and you have a huge other temple close to Banteay Chhmar at 10 kilometers in south of Banteay Chhmar is Banteay Torp. I will not talking very much about this site today, but it's interesting to mention the existence of this site because generally the tourist doesn't visit so much this temple, and the most interesting thing in this temple is you can find the wooden ceiling, the original wooden ceiling in this temple. Some part is in good condition. So Banteay Chhmar himself is located just in 10 kilometers in north of this site. So here you have the aerial overview of the site, and here the drawing, the layout. So you can see you have different complex. You have one huge barrage with one artificial island. We call that Mebon. And you have probably the limit of the town here, different satellite temple around the main complex, and the main complex is limited by a huge, very wide moat. So what is the meanings of Banteay Chhmar? So according Etienne Aymonier, is probably one of the first visitors of this site. He mentioned on the publication he was made after the visit of this site, or Le Cambodge, les provinces siamoises. The meanings, according Etienne Aymonier, is the small citadel or the citadel of cat. So it depends if you pronounce the R in the end of Chhmar or not. And Etienne Lunier de la Jonquière, he was in charge for the FAO to make the inventory of the Khmer monument in Cambodia and also in Thailand. He was also give the number, the IK number of this site, so it's 816. And he was just mentioned on his inventory the Citadel of Cat. So, but probably, so currently the Citadel of Cat is, this meaning is the most diffuse today. You can find this interpretation of the name of Banteay Chhmar in many guidebook, but probably the real phonetic pronunciation was Chhmar, and so it means in reality small or teeny. So this is the reason why I give the title of my presentation, The Small Citadel, for make the big difference with the current interpretation of the site according the name, so the Citadel of the Cat. And you have the, this original meanings is probably linked with the meanings of Angkor Thom, the great city. So in Angkor Thom, you have the great city, and in Banteay Chhmar, you have the small city. All of them was built at the same time. So when was built Banteay Chhmar? Here you have the chronology sequence of the Angkorian period, and Banteay Chhmar was built with the other temple of the Bayon style in this blue part. So it's in the end of the 12th century, beginning of the 13th century. So you can see it's contemporary with the Gothic cathedral in Europe, and for example, Notre-Dame de Paris. And concerning the event linked with the beginning of the period of the Bayon style, you have the Angkor was taken over by one Cham king in 1177, and Jayaman VII, probably when he was young, he was spent a lot of time in Champa, but with a Cham coalition and a Khmer coalition, he was taken over again Angkor, and with his rule, with his reign, you have some evolution of the Khmer architecture, and especially you have the creation of the face tower. So this kind of structure, superstructure, symbolize finally the Bayon style himself. You have another important modification during the period of Jayamanth VII. Before him, the state religion was the Brahmanism, and especially the Shivaism, and probably during the first half of the 12th century, maybe the Vishnuism was probably more important with the creation of Angkor Wat. But with Jayamanth VII, the Mahayana Buddhism already present in Cambodia and in the Indochina Peninsula was for the first time the state religion. So here you have the most important trinity, Buddhic trinity, during the period of Jayamanth VII. You can find here on this map the distribution of the different monuments of Jayamanth VII, and the size of the dot represents the importance of the different monuments built by this king. So of course Angkor is the most important place, but Banteay Chhmar is probably the second place where you can find a very high density of this kind of monument. So after the Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism of Jayamanth VII, after him, you have a very short iconoclastic reaction linked with a Shivaism revival, and some image, a Buddhic image on the Jayamanth VII temple in Angkor was modified or defaced, erased. So you have one example here, the same trinity we have just saw before. So Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha on Naga, and Prajnaparamita was erased. And here you have another example. This is a modification probably of one sitting Avalokiteshvara. You have 4 arms. And the body of Avalokiteshvara was used for create a Shiva Linga. So here you have also 2 niches with originally a Buddha image, and the Buddha was clearly defaced here. So you can find some trace of the legs and the top of the head of the Buddha. And here is the same image, but the Buddha image was modified to create a Shivaite ascetic, a Rishi. So it's a big problem for the first scholar, a French scholar, was walking and studied the Bayon style temple, because in Angkor you don't have so much evidence of the Buddhism in this temple. So after the short Shivaism revival, the Theravada Buddhism become very strong, and you have some modification and reutilization of the Jayamanth VII temple. So, for example, here you have one Buddhic terrace in Preakan, and on the same temple, inside the central tower, you have also one stupa, probably added and built during the 15th century. So probably we can also consider some modification of the iconography during the Theravada Buddhism after the Shivaism revival. So in Bayon, for example, we have some evidence of originally you have a Buddha image, for example, here, or something linked with the Buddhism, and you have the transformation of this Buddhic image on Shiva Linga, and the Linga himself after was destroyed. You have also the same phenomenon here. So inside this niche originally was a Buddha image, and the body of the Buddha was used for carve this pedestal and the Shiva Linga, but the Shiva Linga currently is destroyed. We can probably also consider some part, a few parts of the iconography of the Bayon was added or just recarved during the Theravada Buddhism period. So this Buddha image, for example, and also this image of the stupa on one pillar of the inner gallery of the Bayon. Sometimes some modification during the Theravada Buddhism period was quite impressed, because you can find here the upper part, the superstructure was changed in stupa for this temple located in Kampong Cham, Vatnokor. And you have also in this pediment, the original pediment was probably recarved for a new iconography linked with the Theravada Buddhism. So originally it was a link with the Mahayana Buddhism, and after you have some modification after recurving for the Theravada Buddhism. So finally, this Mahayana Buddhism temple built by Jayavarman VII was probably abandoned around the 15th century for the utilization for the ritual practice. So you have some pictures before the clearings program in Angkor, for example, of the Bayonne, or here from Tassom. So in this historical context, Banteay Chhmar is an exception in the Bayonne style monument group. This exception makes this monument very important for the studies of the Bayonne style period. So why? But in Banteay Chhmar, we can find the evidence of the modification made by the Shivaite iconoclast. So we have the original Buddhic iconography made during the period of Jayavarman VII. Here you can find one image of the Buddha on the one pillar of the third enclosure of Banteay Chhmar, and here you can find these funny pictures with Theravada monks take the pictures of this pediment, and we make a zoom on this pediment, so we don't find any evidence of the modification or the destruction of this pediment with the Buddha image in the central part. And we don't have also any evidence of the reutilization of this site by the Theravada Buddhism. So probably this site was not reused after the abandon of this complex for the Mahayana Buddhism, and therefore Banteay Chhmar is an unmodified historical document. But without any maintenance during the last 800 years, this Buddhist complex become a colossal chaos of stone. So here you can find some pictures took by Georges Grelier, and you will see after the current condition of this temple is quite terrible. So I will start the virtual visit of this site. So we will start by the Barai. So generally we don't visit this area because it's generally full of water, more and less. So here you have the one aerial pictures of the Barai. It's very large. You have the dimension here, and in the center you can find the Mebon, so one artificial island, and also the landing, so where it was possible to take the boat to access to this artificial island. So you have the bank of the Barai have some laterite step, so it's quite unusual because if you compare with Angkor, the most bigger Barai, the western Barai and the eastern Barai, is a dike, but you don't have any trace of a laterite step, for example. Only Srasang, for example, have this kind of step. The landing, unfortunately, is totally destroyed by the time and also by the looting, probably. Here you have the one aerial pictures of the Mebon. So the design of this island is very, very special because we can find one dike here, and the shape, you have a lot of curve. It looks like maybe linked with the design of a snake, I don't know. You have a moat after, so you have another, finally you have another island in the central part with 2 ponds, and finally the temple is just in the center of this composition. The temple himself is in very bad condition, as you can see in these pictures. And the main important part, so in red, you can see here in these aerial pictures, the different structure for the landscape. So this is probably the limit of the town, the limit of the domain, of the cultural domain here, and the distribution of the different satellite temple, and also Prasad Banteay Chhmar, so the temple himself, the main complex. On the background, you can see the Dome Rake Mountain, And the limit between the border between Cambodia and Thailand is somewhere here. So we will start for the satellite temple by the eastern one. So as you can see, this one is very, very destroyed. But some of them is in not so bad condition. The first northern one also, the superstructure is missing. But the second northern one is in better condition, but totally hid by the vegetation. But as you can see, we have some part of the superstructure with a face, human face, on the top. The first Western satellite complex have also one face tower. Just two sides of this face tower is in good condition. But the second Western satellite temple is in better condition and is surrounded by a moat, by the way. And you can see here, so the current condition of this face tower. So the first southern satellite temple is unfortunately again totally destroyed. But you have the second southern satellite temple in quite good condition and is quite famous because some tourists visit this one. Is more accessible, so it's called Taprom, like Taprom in Angkor. But it's linked with the face because Plom is linked probably with Brahma, so it's the old Brahma. So these pictures was took in 2009 after the clearance program managed by the Minister of Culture and Fine Art. And finally, the last satellite temple is not on the main axis of the composition. So we can imagine, originally it was probably possible to imagine this satellite temple here, but for the question of space, maybe, I don't know, it was installed in the southeast area of this composition. So we have again one mold, and the central part have also a stone structure, but it's mostly in a laterite and in very bad condition. So the central temple is composed by a huge area between the temple himself and the moat and the fourth enclosure. So currently we don't have any archaeological survey for said clearly what is the function of this area. But the most interesting thing is this pound surrounding by a moat is located and have the same design of what we can find in Prakan in Angkor. So in these aerial pictures you can see the localization of the central and the main temple of Banteay Chhmar. So it's totally covered by the vegetation, and here you have the moat linked with the fourth enclosure. So quickly we can see this moat is quite wide, 63 meters wide. We have also this monumental composition with the giant, the demon, and the god. We can find the same kind of monumental composition in Angkor Thom for the entrance of Angkor Thom in front of the monumental gate, and also again in Prakan. So you have 3 sites in Cambodia with this kind of causeway with the giant. You have here the pictures of the current condition of the gate, the monumental gate of Angkor Thom, Banteay Chhmar. So you have 4 gates like that, and you have to imagine it was very similar of the gate of Banteay Chhmar and Taprom. We can find it's very similar of Prakan and Taprom, one house of fire. The condition is quite good. And the main temple himself is composite, is surrounded by a huge gallery, the third enclosure, and this enclosure is quite famous for the researcher and for the tourists also, because you can find this beautiful bas-relief, very similar with what we can find in the outer gallery of the Bayonne. So these pictures was took in 2007 during the in the end of the conservation project of the Minister of Culture, and currently the Global Heritage Fund have started one conservation work in 2008, so in this area. So I will show you just one example of the panels of the bas-relief of the northern part of this third gallery. So some part is very similar with the Bayonne, and other part, as I will show you after, is very, very different. So, as you can see, this bas-relief is more smaller. The wall of the bas-relief is more smaller, so in reality you have 1 or 2 registers. So you have 538 meters for the outer gallery of Banteay Chhmar, but the Bayonne himself have just 315 meters. But he has 3 registers, but as you know probably, only the eastern part is finished for the carving, but the western part is mostly unfinished. So concerning the difference between the bas-relief of the Bayonne and the bas-relief of Banteay Chhmar, we have this kind of panel, for example, quite famous, is the panel of the Lokeshvara, located in the west side of the third enclosure of Banteay Chhmar. So this is the first Lokeshvara located in the northern part of this composition. This is the second one. And here you can see you have some missing part, because it's the result of the looting in the end of the 90s. So I take the chance to combine together different pictures of took by the FAO long time ago, especially during the 60s, to try to propose one reconstruction of this panel, because lot of part of this panel is missing, or in the National Museum in Phnom Penh now. So the last one, especially, is probably on site, but collapsed. So I just showed before these panels, so it's on site. These 4 panels was stolen in the end of 1998, and 2 of them came back to Cambodia in March 1999. And enter to the National Museum. So if you visit the National Museum in Phnom Penh, you can see these panels. And this one, you have 2 panels currently missing. And the last one, in the southern part, is probably on site, but unfortunately is collapsed. So you can find some evidence of these panels. For example, this is a part of the worshipper of close to Avalokiteshvara. Here you have the one head, one face of this image of Lokeshvara, the last one, and the feet, for example, of this last Lokeshvara. We can find also something very similar of what we can find in Taprom and Prakan, is the Hall of Dancers. We don't know exactly the real function of this structure, but here you can see the condition of this Hall of Dancers currently. You have another view from the Hall of Dancers to the eastern complex of Banteay Chhmar, and you see the trees, the importance of the trees inside the site is very, very important. It's probably one reason of the destruction of this site. This is one view inside the eastern complex, and you can see the first enclosure here. So this is the main and the central part of this complex. So I will show you the central tower, and unfortunately this tower is missing. So the composition of the central part is quite strange, because you have three towers combined together, connect together. The central one, the most important one, fall down, but we don't have so much example of this kind of composition for the Jayaman 7 architecture. You have just one example in Prasat Samyod in Thailand, in Lopburi, and another example is Banteay Chhmar in north of Angkor Thom, but the tower, the central 3 towers, is not connected together. We have also some annex complex. So you have the northern complex, Lakinta Prom is quite same. You have also the equivalent in south. And for conclude the different part of this huge complex, we have one western complex, the first one, with a very interesting face tower here. And these pictures was took in 2007, in April 2007, so it was during the Khmer New Year. It was quite funny because you don't have the sun with these pictures, with this panorama, but when I took these pictures, it was 2 sound systems was installed, one in eastern part of Banteay Chhmar and one in the western part. So it was very, very noisy, and a lot of Khmer people from the different village of Banteay Chhmar and of course from Sisopon visit at this time the temple for enjoy and make some party there. So this is another view to the central part of this eastern complex, western complex, and also depend of the season when you visit this temple, the atmosphere changed totally, and the vegetation also change and grow up very quickly. So this is the last structure, the second western complex. So this structure is quite original because it's built on one platform. And you can see that, but in the central part of this enclosure, you have one small state pyramid, but mostly destroyed currently. So, how was Banteay Chhmar originally? So, for try to reply to this question, maybe the reconstruction of this monument can help to answer on this question. But the basic for the reconstruction should be scientific and not just artistic imagination. So why? Because the process of the reconstruction is also the source of a new question on the monument. So for try to explain this difference, to separate, sometimes you have the archaeologist give the information to the computer graphic designer, for example, for propose one restitution. So here you have one famous reconstruction made by Louis de Laporte during his first trip in Cambodia with Doudard de Lagrée when for the exploration of the Mekong River, and it's a very artistic representation of the Bayon temple. So if you know a little bit this monument, you can see clearly some mistake concerning the inner gallery, and for sure the outer gallery, when he was visit the temple at this time, was not like that, because the wall of the Barif was accessible, and we have some pictures quick after this visit, so we have some information concerning this condition. But here you have a real reconstruction of the western elevation of the Bayon, of the third level of the Bayon, by the same author, Louis de Laporte. It was made that after his second trip in Cambodia, and it's quite good because only the crowning is not perfect, but it's a real, a great scientific restitution of this part of the Bayon. So which kind of archaeological reconstruction we can propose for Banteay Chhmar? So we have two possibilities: the two-dimensional image made by a hand drawing or by a two-dimensional design software, or you have the 3D digital reconstruction with a 3D modeler, for example, and we have different possibilities. So the multi-point of view in 2 dimensions generate from the 3D model. The animation, so it's a 2-dimensional image plus the time, so it's in 3D also. And you have also the physical model. Now we have some technique for print out the 3D model. So here you have one example in 2 dimensions of the archaeological reconstruction of the Bayonne. One was proposed by Jacques Dumarsais and published in 1967. And as you can see, the outer gallery of the Bayonne at this time was not restituted. And many years after, I have proposed to complete this archaeological reconstruction with this new hypothesis concerning the outer gallery. So this means the archaeological reconstruction is not definitive. It's a present. It represents your current understanding of the monument based on the synthesis of the archaeological and architectural studies. So concerning the 3D model, you have one example here. It's a laser scanning in 3 dimensions made by the laboratory of Ikeuchi in Todai, the University of Tokyo. So it's one kind of 3D model, but the result of the 3D laser scanning is a architectural survey, and the result of this 3D model is just a digital copy. So it's very useful, but at the same time, it's not a restitution. You have another way, is to try to propose one reconstruction based on the architectural survey, for example, made by Jacques Dumarsais. So this is one restitution proposed by my Italian colleague from the School of Architecture of Venice in 2004-2005. And this restitution is based on the hypothesis of Dumarsais. So you can see the outer gallery was not totally complete because the superstructure is missing. So what source do we have to make an archaeological reconstruction of Banteay Chhmar? So we don't have any description of this temple during the period of its construction, and the only source for try to elaborate the reconstruction of this temple is the temple himself, and the other temple linked with the same period of Banteay Chhmar. So it means the current condition of his stone skeleton, the archaeological trace on his stone skeleton. I will talk a little bit about that, but it's mostly the wooden structure. The stone pieces resulting from his collapse, and the figurative architecture on his bas-relief, and we can find also on the bas-relief of the Bayonne temple. So concerning the figurative architecture on the bas-relief, you have one example here from one article of Henri Parmentier. And here, this is from the bas-relief of the Bayonne, so it's not a drawing, but the quality is very similar. You have a lot of detail, as you can see. We can see clearly the final, the antifix on the superstructure. You have the trident on the top, so it was probably a metallic element, probably in copper or bronze. You have the 4 doors, for example. So you have a lot of detail already on the bas-relief. For the wooden structure, we have also on the bas-relief some representation here, proposed, redrawn by Henri Parmentier. So, since the stone masonry of Banteay Chhmar is fully collapsed, its reconstruction is mostly linked with the question of the original condition of its superstructure, and particularly the distribution of its face tower. So the question is, okay, we have the survey, the architectural survey, for example, of this complex, but unfortunately, the question is to know which kind of superstructure was covered this structure originally. So according the description made by Georges Grelier on Banteay Chhmar, it was considered in different articles 55 towers in Banteay Chhmar, and half of them was a face tower. And concerning the satellite temple, it was considered all of them was covered by a face tower. So this is the original layout made by Georges Grolier, and this is the inventory of the towers, so the face towers and the tower without face during the period of the survey of Grolier. So if you compare with the survey made by Christophe Potier in 2000, for example, some of them is not mentioned compared with the previous survey, so some towers was disappear between the 30s and 2000. So this is my inventory concerning the current localization of the face tower for the satellite temple. And these pictures was took by my colleague. He's a Japanese photographer, Baku Seito. We have published together one book on Banteay Chhmar in 2005. And he took these pictures in 2003. And after I defined my PhD in 2004, I came back to Cambodia and I visit quickly Banteay Chhmar when I came back. And I took these pictures. It's the same structure, but in 2004, one tree, this one, fall down and destroy this tower. So the process of the destruction of the tower still continued. So here you have one picture took by Grolier during probably the 20s. So you can see clearly one tower on the gallery of the Eastern complex. And this is the same point of view, but now, and of course, the face is missing. So the question is, how many face towers originally in Banteay Chhmar? So I have proposed already one inventory and some research published in 2003 on this book, on the face tower of Banteay Chhmar, and I make one update for the publication of the Bayonne New Perspective. So if we take some time and check some part of the monument, we can find this kind of evidence. This is one eyes from the northern pavilion of the third enclosure of Banteay Chhmar. This is another example of a piece of eyes. This is a piece with a mouth and an ear. Noise, sorry. And here you have some part of the crowning, for example. This is one part of the ear. Here you have two pieces combined together. It's a part of the face, clearly. You have another piece of mouth, and so on. So the most interesting piece is this one, for example. I find a lot of pieces like that, and it was difficult to understand where come from this piece. It's a trapezoidal shape, and you have clearly two worshippers, and so we can imagine it's probably a circular element. So where come from this kind of piece? But we have currently one tower can explain where come from this piece, because here on the first Western satellite temple, we have one, I call that a necklace of worshippers. So you can see here, before the neck of the face, you have this kind of element. So here you have the distribution of the different face for the satellite temple, and here, resulting of my inventory and my hypothesis, the distribution of the face tower and the tower without face inside the central complex. So at least we can consider we have originally 50 face towers during the last construction phase of Banteay Chhmar. And in Banteay Chhmar, you have three kinds of face tower, and only the second one is just located in Banteay Chhmar. The other one you can find in Bayonne also. So the last the last example of this second type of face tower is only in the Western satellite complex, the first Western satellite complex. Unfortunately, the other one is, all of them is totally collapsed. So for the realization of the 3D restitution, it's a combination of the graphic documentation, the classic architectural survey, and some photography, old and new one, and also the knowledge and the studies on the architecture and the archaeology of the monument and the other monument linked with the Bayeux style monument. And combined together with a 3D modeler, it was possible to propose some a 3D representation of this monument. So the Bayeux style is very, very funny because you have some element is like a Lego. You have the repetition of a different element. So we can elaborate the 3D vocabulary of this architecture and reuse the different element of this vocabulary for elaborate the 3D model. So this 3D model was based on the layout elaborated by Georges Grolier, of course. It was the only element I was used because the elevation was never drawn. And so the result after 9 months of work on this 3D model was like that. So I will make some zoom of the different place of this temple. So this is the outer gallery. This is the hall of the dancers, for example. This is the eastern complex, the central complex. So here you can see what I explained before. You have 3 towers for the central complex combined together, but the central tower is missing currently. You have the first western complex, the northern complex, south, and the second western complex. But you have 2 hypotheses concerning the superstructure of this complex. So this is one representation with a face, but you have another possibility, is without face, because unfortunately, I don't find any evidence currently to prove it was clearly a face tower, but I have the evidence it was a tower. So currently, I can propose only 2 hypotheses. So what I have proposed just now is just the result of the last construction phase of this monument. But like every Bayeux style monument, Banteay Chhmar is the result of several construction phases. So the most important contributor concerning the architectural history of Banteay Chhmar is Georges Grolier himself. He wrote a different article. He took also 160 pictures. So it's very, very important document for the research on these temples. And he was also elaborate and made this layout based use like a basement for my 3D restitution. So in one article, he was clearly recognized the central part mentioned B here was built before the construction of C and E. So it means the first enclosure was built in first, and after you have the addition of the eastern complex and the western complex. The second most important contributor concerning the Bayeux style period is Philip Stern, but he was focused on the stylistic analysis. So one of his results was to divide the Bayeux style period in three parts. And currently his work is still the main tools for the study of the Bayeux style. But concerning Banteay Chhmar himself, because he was visited Banteay Chhmar just one time, he was considered, based on the stylistic analysis, Banteay Chhmar was built during the second period of the Bayeux style. But full time during the second period. is quite different because you can see the Bayonne, for example, was start during the second period and finished during the third period, according his work. So my methodology elaborate for my PhD was based on one building archaeology analysis. So this is the basement of my research. I complete this research with the stylistic analysis elaborated by Philip Stern, and also for validate this first point of view and complete also this point of view. One archaeometry analysis was made in collaboration with the Japanese team working in Bayonne and the University of Waseda in Tokyo. And the synthesis of these 3 points of view give me the possibility to elaborate the chronology sequence of each Jayaman 7 temples. So here you can see just quickly the result of the building archaeology studies of Banteay Chhmar. So in the different color is for identify the different masonry, the different period of the construction of the masonry. Here the circle is for indicate the archaeological trace of the wooden structure. Here, for example, this line indicates this part was carved defect for add a new masonry. So you have different examples here. The blue part, for example, here is originally it was a wall, and you have the creation of a new opening, and of course you don't have a real lintel, so it was necessary to reinforce this masonry with some wooden beam. So this is the localization of the wooden beam. Some door was filled by a new masonry, so you have a lot of modification in this temple. Some part of the iconography sometimes was hid by the addition. So this is the same structure here. You can see the section. So some windows, for example, also was filled by some masonry. So in this two-dimensional representation, you have the result of this survey with the different addition. It's possible to elaborate some diagram like that of the structural relation of the different structure, and also here the structural chronological sequence of each structure. And it's also necessary to care about the wooden structure for the architectural history. So we have two types of wooden structure. So you have the wooden partition and some wooden extension. So here you have some example of this archaeological trace for attach the wooden carpent of this wooden extension. Is same here again. So this is a distribution of the different wooden structure in Banteay Chhmar. We don't have so much example of the wooden structure in this temple, but Taprom and Prakan have a lot of this kind of archaeological trace. And here I propose so the chronology sequence of this monument. Of course, some part is a pure conjectural proposition, so especially the library, for example, because if we compare this design of the original architectural program of Banteay Chhmar with the other Jayaman 7 temple, we have always 1 or 2 libraries in the eastern part. But we don't have this library now, because it's possible they are destroyed after. So quickly, after the first project, maybe you have the modification of the corner pavilion with the addition of the masonry for the tower, but without face, and you have also some wooden extension. It's difficult to know currently the limit of this extension, if it was a real gallery or just some building attached, and very short building attached to the stone skeleton of this first gallery. And we have a huge extension of Banteay Chhmar, so it's a red part. So suddenly this small temple become a very, very huge complex. and some part was filled by some new structure. For example, here you have this face tower, so you have to imagine for access and to bring the stone from outside to inside, it was necessary to care about the divinity installed already inside the temple, because maybe the temple was used for the ritual practice already at this time. So you have the same process in Taprom and Prakan and Bayonne, of course. So if I make the synthesis, a very short synthesis of this architectural history, this is the original design and the original architectural program of Banteay Chhmar. So it's very, very small. And Banteay Chhmar was extend for create this huge complex. So the third part of my methodology was the archaeometric analysis. So it's based on the magnetic susceptibility. And with my colleague, we have made several surveys the last 10 years, and we have completed the magnetic map of Banteay Chhmar this year, last March. So this is a result of this inventory of the magnetism, because the sandstone in Angkor, for example, is naturally magnetic. It depends on the proportion of the magnetism, the iron oxide inside the sandstone. And the result of this magnetism in Angkor was very useful for complete and validate the architectural history of this temple. But in Banteay Chhmar, as you can see, it's a little bit a kind of mixture, so it's very difficult to make the interpretation of this result of the magnetic susceptibility. But we have the same kind of magnetic susceptibility between Banteay Chhmar and Bayonne. But the distance is very huge between these temples, and the analysis made by my colleague, Professor Uchida, and his student show clearly we have the same kind of sandstone in Bayonne and Banteay Chhmar. But the problem is around Banteay Chhmar, we don't find this kind of sandstone because it's more a siliceous sandstone around. So here you have some pictures of the quarry. It's a modern quarry used for the basement of the new pagoda of the village of Banteay Chhmar. So it's between Banteay Chhmar and Banteay Torp. So the question is, where is the quarry of Banteay Chhmar? And Georges Grolier have proposed long time ago to consider probably this quarry was located in 20 kilometers around Banteay Chhmar, probably in the Damrek mountain. So here you have the geological map of the area, so in Thailand and Cambodia. So Banteay Chhmar is the number 24. And if we make a zoom, we can determine just 4 areas where we can find the same kind of sandstone was used for the construction of Banteay Chhmar, and the most credible one is the first one, because it's just around 20 kilometers in the northwest of Banteay Chhmar. So here you have the timetable of the main Jayaman 7 temples. So Banteay Chhmar is here. So you have the 3 construction phases of this temple. And concerning the evolution of the face tower, Banteay Chhmar is very, very important, because as you can see, the prototype of the face tower is probably in Bayonne, and this kind of face tower was used for the extension of Banteay Chhmar, but during the extension of Banteay Chhmar, you have some evolution of the plastic composition of the face tower, and some result of this evolution of the plastic composition of the face tower was reused for the extension of the Bayonne. So finally, we can consider Banteay Chhmar like a key of these temples, naturally, but we can consider the creation of the face tower with the first construction phase of the Bayonne, and you have the modification, the evolution of the face tower during the huge extension program of Banteay Chhmar, and after, this evolution was reused for the extension program of the Bayonne. So we come back to this table, and so as you can see, the first construction phase of Banteay Chhmar is contemporary with the first construction phase of the Bayonne and the third phase of Prakan. It's quite interesting because this is the representation of the third stage of the construction of Prakan, and this this distribution of the structure is very linked with the enumeration of the divine population of Prakan described in his foundation stele. So probably we can consider the stele, the inscription on the consecration stele of Prakan describe this state of this monument. And we know the consecration date of Prakan is 1191 AD, and we have another date, it's quite new because it's from Banteay Chhmar himself. On this building, the building 45, you have one inscription, one part is in Sanskrit, and it was translated by my colleague, Professor Maxwell. And on the Sanskrit part, you have this date, so 1216 AD, and it's very interesting information because it's very, very new. This structure, the building 45, as you can see, is here, so is linked in reality with the huge extension program of Banteay Chhmar. So if we come back to the cross-architectural history of Banteay Chhmar and Bayonne, we can consider probably the first the first construction phase of Banteay Chhmar and the Bayonne was around 1191 AD, and the huge extension of Banteay Chhmar was around 1216 AD. So it means the other extension in Banteay Chhmar and the huge extension of the Bayonne was made after. So according to this conjectural research on the date, we can consider 25 years when spent for the first architectural program of Banteay Chhmar and the end of the construction of the building 45. Therefore, 30 or 35 years was probably necessary to complete Banteay Chhmar for its final stage. So according George, he was trying to calculate the construction time of Banteay Chhmar with a lot of hypotheses, of course, but his result was 34 years. And finally, he was thinking probably it was impossible for different reasons. It was not realistic. So it was considered 50 or 60 years for the construction of Banteay Chhmar. So, but probably, maybe 30 or 35 years is realistic. So, to try to conclude, one of the results of my PhD was to elaborate also the comparative analysis of the different original design of the Bayonne style monument, and it was possible to elaborate 4 classes of temples, probably decide and elaborate in the beginning of the rule of the reign of Jayaman VII. And Banteay Chhmar, as you can see, was originally designed for the 2nd class, and it was changed during the extension program for the 4th class. And you have just 4 temples. You have Taprom, it was created originally for this class of monument, is a prototype in reality of this class of temples. You have Prakan, Bayonne, and Banteay Chhmar after its modification and its extension. This class of temple is probably linked with the Buddhist mandala, according to the work of Mont Herzing published in 1956. And if we check the hypothesis, the conjectural history of the evolution of the temple of Jayaman VII based on the class of this temple, probably the prototype of all of them is probably in Komponsvai Prakan, so it means in 95 kilometers in east of Angkor. And this temple was used like a base for the elaboration of the 2nd class, and the 2nd class was the base for the third and the fourth class. So you can see you have Taprom after Prakan. Prakan is a very, very good example because it's close to be perfect for this class of temples. And after you have the third level of the Bayon and Banteay Chhmar after his extension. So the final question, but unfortunately I cannot reply to this question, is why Banteay Chhmar was transformed from a middle-class temple to one of the most important provincial towns of the Kingdom of Jayavarman VII. So I hope in the future some historian will try to reply to this question. So for try to conclude, I propose one animation, so it's a 2-dimension with time, so you have a three dimension of this restitution of Banteay Chhmar. So I choose the first hypothesis for the second Western complex, so it means with the face tower. So thank you for your attention.